This podcast was brought to you by Meros cryptocurrency. Meros is a cryptocurrency payment system that does what cryptocurrency originally intended to do. Be a practical and secure form of direct payment, Meros utilizes the best of current technology in a powerful new way. It introduces a groundbreaking consensus mechanism called merit caching. This enables Meros to be both feeless and instant while maintaining the same level of integrity of traditional networks like Bitcoin. To find out how you can participate in the future of crypto payments, go to meroscrypto.io now.
Hello and welcome to State of the Project Meros. This is the February 2020 edition and I am your host Cryptosi and I'm joined by the one and only Kayaba. Kayaba, good evening, how are you?
Good, but now I'm thinking about what if I wasn't the one and only? Like, you kind of got me dreaming here. Nah, just kidding.
Well,
it's great to be here.
I'm pretty sure the world would be a much better place if there were 4 or 5 Kayabas. Yes, exactly.
I am difficult, we will never know.
So just for people who have just tuned in and this is their first time tuning in, I'll give a brief explanation of what is going to happen in this podcast. Basically, we discuss Meros, which is a brand new cryptocurrency being built from the ground up by Kayaba and his band of merry developers. And what we do is each month I pick out some of the more interesting and sometimes the less interesting parts of the GitHub, which is where all the code is open for everyone to see. And we speak about other parts of the project and how Kayaba feels it's developing. And once the project is launched in mainnet, I guess we will carry on speaking about how it develops and how it grows over time. So thank you for listening. And as I say, every single month, we've got loads and loads and loads to get through. So I'm just going to start with what is the biggest thing about Meros this month. And it is developer testnet D2, I'm calling it. Kayaba, could you tell us about developer testnet 2? What exactly are you testing and how is it coming along?
So it's actually the codename DT2, not D2, for developer testnet 2.
Oh, so it has a code name of its own, so I didn't need to give it one.
It's just the abbreviation DT2.
Okay, DT2.
So basically, the last time we did a testnet, I think, was over a year ago. And a lot has changed since then. I believe I've talked before about how many times I've effectively rewritten the various parts of Meros, whether it be just because of protocol changes, because of optimizations, because the protocol didn't change, but we weren't meeting the protocol. And there's been quite a few iterations, and we're getting to the point where we're closer to launch. We have a lot more of the functionality fleshed out. And I feel, while Meros isn't ready, it's secure and usable enough to start being thoroughly tested. So, while of course with my plans for testnets is before mainnet, I want to have a really long, like just a month-long testnet to really put Meros to its paces, get some people in reviewing it, have a bug bounty. This is not that testnet. Maybe one or two more testnet, at least one more testnet before that testnet. But really, beyond testing Meros, it's meant to show people that this isn't just talk and random commits to a random URL on the web. No, this is a living project that actually exists. It's actually runnable. It can actually handle transactions. It can actually handle verifications. It penalizes bad actors, so on and so on.
How have you found the reaction from developers and their willingness to join the testnet so far?
So with DT2, we really didn't get a lot of developer volunteers. We got a lot of user volunteers. And we did get a few developer volunteers, don't get me wrong. But honestly, that's something I'm fine with. I'm excited to see users complain about the UI, about accessibility, because while we still don't have a good GUI in any sense of the word. It exists. It gives you a text field. You can enter an address in it. You can click send, and that's all it does. It's a very, very limited GUI. But I'm so excited to see what people think of Meros instead of what developers think of the underlying technology. Unfortunately, what happened was, as I did some private testing on the DT2 release, and everything was fine. But one of the little hiccups was that you had to manually connect to seed nodes, to other servers, so on, so on. This has been a hiccup for all the testnets we've done, actually. And it's just because I never got around to pure finding. It's one of those things that, yes, you need, but it just wasn't my focus because I was focusing on proper transaction handling, verifications, adaptive difficulty, so on and so on. And I was so excited because I managed to finish it in time. And I put out a new DT2 release, and everyone was ready. And I think we got over 5 people there at the time of launch, with roughly 10 to 15 volunteering to host a node during the overall process. So I was happy with the turnout, especially since some offered to run multiple nodes, which was very exciting. And then as soon as the network started, oh my gosh, it just rained down. It was not stable in any sense of the word, thanks to the peer finding I added, which was immensely disappointing. It was a real egg on my face. So I created a branch called DT2 Hotfix, and I just immediately tried to get enough patches out as fast as possible to get it working again. But it wasn't going to happen.
Well, this is the exact point that you have developer testnet, right? So that you can highlight these problems and then fix them.
Sure, definitely. And I'm really happy that we caught this at a testnet and not a mainnet, of course. I think my personal frustration, and of course it is personal frustration, there were expected to be bugs, there were expected to be issues, but I think where my personal frustration came from is that I verified it was working, and I was all excited to kind of show it around. It's a project I've been working on for almost 2 years now, and I was happy to really see it spread its wings. And then a few hours later, after working on bugs, I said, we can't do this today. So then I rewrote the networking code and made some protocol changes, and thanks to that, we're in a much better place. And now we do have a stable network again, and I plan on launching a new testnet once I add logging into the code base. Right now, our logging is limited to, you got a block, here's the block info, here's the hash of the block was added. Just very simplistic. And then when Meros has an issue that it doesn't know how to handle, and it decides to exit the program because it's unsafe to continue, it prints out what caused it, semi-vaguely. So given how the last attempt at a testnet went, before we start developer testnet 3, because we rewrote the networking code, and I don't want to just call it developer testnet 2.1, I am going to be calling it developer testnet 3. I do also want to add in logging. So if any more issues do appear, they can be easily reported and clearly identified.
Right. Okay. Have you got it's that difficult question I love to ask, but have you got a kind of time frame in mind for when you'd be moving on to developer testnet 3?
So really, the network is stable. Like, once we updated the network and code, it created a stable and much faster network. So that's not the delay here. The delay here is just adding proper logging. Meros is over 20,000 lines of code, and I think the NIM part, which is what Meros is actually written in, I think that itself goes up around 13K, while our testing code in Python is the other 7K. So it just takes time to add proper logging to all of the code base, and it wouldn't take as long if I had just done it incrementally. If when we had started Meros, I had implemented a logger, I had started using it, and I got into that flow. Unfortunately, that is something I didn't do. If you were to ask why, I would say it's because I am not a traditional developer. I didn't get a master's degree in computer science. I don't have 10 years of experience working for a large company. I'm someone who learned how to code in their free time, has been working on projects for years now, and I know a lot, but I still have my shortcomings, and there's something I've been working on as I continue through Meros, and it's the reason why I've made sure that with the Meros team, I've been surrounding myself with people who know better, because I don't know everything. So for Meros to thrive, it's really important that there's a competent team who can help each other, which is one of the things I'm prioritizing when we get developers together.
Okay, excellent. Right, so I don't know if it's just me or if it does. It really seems like GitHub has been like what we in the UK would call the M25, just packed with traffic. I've been looking through the issues and I noticed 9 new issues. We spoke briefly off air before we started recording. You told me it was far more than that because some of the issues have been opened and already closed. You then reminded me that I was an idiot, and we moved on swiftly. So, out of the issues that
I would never call my dear friend Cryptosi, who I respect immensely, such a harsh word, and I'm insulted that you defame my character like that.
So I picked out this particular issue, number 121, because it was the only one that was tagged with protocol. So to the untrained eye, which was my eye, it had the highest likelihood of being important. And I'm paraphrasing now, but it's the issue was called something, or described as something like, after merit removal, the merit holder was regaining 50 merit. Could you explain to me a bit about issue number 121? How critical is it, and what do you plan to do to solve it?
Right. So there's a few tags that we use on our issue tracker, and they're notably, if I'm trying to remember, there's bug, which is something that's a bug. There's feature, which is a feature request. Discussion, which is like, hey, we're really looking to talk here. We haven't really made up our minds yet. There's critical, which is for generally used with the bug tag, and it says this is super important. It may not need to be fixed immediately because we're not at mainnet yet, but it's something that needs a lot of attention and care. And there's protocol. So protocol isn't used for when our Meros node has a violation of the protocol. We've written up docs with the clearly defined protocol, and it's not just for the Meros node implementation we're writing, it's for anyone who decides to write a Meros node. So we don't use the protocol tag for just our Meros implementation differing. What we use the protocol tag for is for when the protocol we've written has something in it that's unsafe. So it's rarely used, but when it is used, it's really something to keep an eye on. So in this case, it was about merit holders who commit a malicious action. Generally, this is verifying a transaction that competes with another transaction. So if I try to double spend and a merit holder verifies both of them, which we programmed our software not to do, you would have to have custom software, that counts as malicious. And our system has checks around it to automatically penalize the merit holder for doing that. So the system exists so that a malicious merit holder can still regain merit. And this was done for a few reasons. One was that they could always just regain merit with a second account. You can't really ban them forever from the network. 2, if they use the same account, then you can at least know that at one point they were malicious, whether accidentally on purpose. And 3, we don't have to keep track if they ever had a merit removal. We just have to keep track of where they are now. So it's just about simplicity and not just hiding the problem. The thing is that when they regain 50 merit, they gain back a difficulty vote, which means they can vote on what the difficulty to create a send is and what a difficulty to create a data is. And the reason this matters is because if they have a merit removal, which it involves 2 data difficulties, and the question is, when they regain their vote, which data difficulty is used? Is it difficulty A or difficulty B? Depending on when node saw A and when node saw B, they will disagree. So the protocol needs to offer an answer of which one is canon, which one to use in the future. And as of right now, it doesn't.
Okay. How do you intend to? Is it? How would you go about fixing something like that?
So really, it's just a matter of editing the protocol documentation, writing up that Meros doesn't currently follow the protocol in that one aspect, and then later updating Meros to follow the protocol. The likely fix we'll do is that if a difficulty vote is part of a merit removal, it doesn't count. Like, it reverts to the difficulty vote before that. And if there wasn't one, they don't have any difficulty vote.
Right.
Because it's either that, or we pick the first one, or we pick the second one, which is just a bit arbitrary.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
This one isn't critical. It's just a bug with the protocol that can cause nodes to disagree, and therefore it's something we have to fix. Because it isn't critical, and I've been focusing on the testnet, it isn't something I've gotten around to yet.
What I liked about this solution, I did give it a bit of a spoiler, but what I did like about this issue, was that with the documentation where you had actually described it in GitHub, you had put some probable solutions. Now, is it usual for you to add probable solutions, and do you think this is a productive way of you keeping track of your own thought processes, or indeed the thought processes of the rest of the team?
I like writing down my thoughts for a few reasons. One, yes, it helps me remember. I might say, I have ideas on this, but I'm not going to write a fix now. So because of that, it lets me store it. And if I write down my thoughts like that and decide to come back to it later, someone else may chime in. They may say, hey, this is a good idea, but X, Y, Z. So it opens up the floor up to discussion on it, which is something I value and something I hope to happen when we really increase the size of our developer team. And then beyond that, if someone else decides to fix it, they can see kind of where my thoughts were. And if they decide to agree with me, they can implement that idea.
Also, I guess it works vice versa, whereby if they decide to go in another direction, they're kind of prompted to explain why they've gone in a different direction. So I think it works both ways. Would you agree?
Definitely. So it really just opens the floor up to discussion and allows others to participate in the process.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, right. So looking through GitHub this month, researching for this episode, for me, it was great fun. I was like a kid in a candy store. There were so many commits, lots to talk about. And it got me to thinking about Kayaba and his working patterns. Since you seem to be full-time on Meros again, I was just wondering, how do you manage your work/life balance, and how many hours per day do you dedicate to Meros and coding in general?
So when I started Meros, I may have been part-time, but ever since then, I've been full-time. I didn't really take a break off. That said, I think there may have been some weeks in the middle where I got less work done than I probably should have, like really during the first third of the project show or so.
No, I think what I was really referring to was in a few episodes we spoke, and you'd said that, like, for your own personal reasons, you would probably be taking on side gigs, other programming, developing for other projects. And I guess I assumed that would eat into your Meros time, whereas it seems what you're saying is that you end up working full-time and a half, effectively.
Right. And once Meros hits mainnet, that will probably change. Once Meros hits mainnet, unfortunately, just to keep myself afloat, I will probably have to take a full-time job, which means Meros will be slowed down to 20 or 30 hours a week. But my intent is to wait until mainnet, because once Meros hits mainnet, it's in a much different place than when it's at a testnet. Sure, it will still need active development, it will still need bug fixes, it will still need improvements and plans for hard forks and network upgrades, but it's at a much different state. It's a living project that even if I was to walk away and abandon it, it would still be there. But right now, if I walked away and abandoned Meros, it wouldn't be here a month later.
Yeah. Well, I could code it, I guess.
Josie, if I die, I want you to continue Meros.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. Because
hey, you just volunteered. Weren't you talking about how much you enjoyed exploring the GitHub? It's
I
yours,
enjoyed.
It's yours.
Okay.
If I die,
all right.
Don't worry, I'm young. The chances are very low.
Yeah. Well, thank God for that. Thank God for that.
So yeah, I've been working full time, and once Meros hits mainnet and it's at a point where it can survive without me, I'm not saying that it would do well if the lead developer disappeared. I'm just saying, technically, yeah, it can. I'll probably slow down to part-time on Meros, just so I can keep myself afloat, as I don't plan on Meros being able to give me a full salary at launch, especially with the size of the pre-mine we picked.
Well, that's what I was just about to speak about, the pre-mine, actually. Do you feel that the pre-mine puts you in a completely different position because it then means you can start to delegate and pay for developers to join? Also, some developers join projects and buy into them and then develop on them as a way to grow their investment. So do you see those two things also being avenues for you to attract new developers?
This podcast has been brought to you by Rhubarb Media. Rhubarb Media are the branding specialists behind successful crypto projects such as PivX, Vendible, and Libertaria. The Rhubarb style is both loved and respected the world over. So if you want your project to appeal to techies and everyday users alike, give Rhubarb Media a try. You cannot possibly be disappointed. Link is in the description.
So the pre-mine definitely opens up a lot of avenues, and that's the purpose of the pre-mine, to make things accessible and not leave us to mining in goodwill, which I don't want to demean, of course, very important things, but it's just meant to provide a safety buffer. That said, the pre-mine we picked, it's not 20%, it's not 10%, it's not 5%. Because Meros doesn't have a total supply, because it keeps having block rewards, it's hard to give it an exact percent unless you delimit it by time. But with the current numbers we're looking at, it's less than 3.5% of the 5-year supply. So it's still a decent amount, don't get me wrong, but considering it's time blocked, considering Meros isn't going to launch at $100 a coin, or because of that, we still have to be cautious about what we use it for.
Okay, before we go off topic, you've done the politician thing and you didn't actually answer, how do you manage the work-life balance?
Oh, sorry. I think for me, what I really just do is I try to keep weekends. I don't really have a fixed schedule. I'll keep off hours, wake up whenever. But I do try to make sure that at least 2 days of a week, I step back. And, maybe I'll do 2 or 3 hours of work, but I'll also play some Minecraft or just watch a movie or two. And keeping those couple days open, it really helps me continue without overextending myself.
When you do sit down to work on Meros, typically, how long will a coding session last? I watched you had a short period where you was doing coding on, I can't remember if it was Twitch. It was some video streaming service. How long would you sit at a screen and work solidly on Meros at each sitting, roughly?
I probably, for the 5 days a week where I really work on Meros, because on the weekends I'll probably still put in an hour or two, but it's not my focus. I probably put in 8 to 10 hours. I probably wake up, do my things for an hour or two, get to work, eat lunch, go back to work, eat dinner, go to sleep. And I'll probably be working on Meros for a solid 8 to 10 hours. Not all of that's spent at a keyboard. Some of it is spent planning, some of it is spent researching, some of it is just making sure I'm using the right algorithms for the job. But it is probably 8 to 10 hours there.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay.
And then, yes, I have done Twitch streams in the past for a couple hours each, just because they're a bit hard to keep my focus on. The reason I haven't been doing those recently is because my hard drive died. So I've been working on my laptop, and it's just not really that suitable for streaming.
Okay. All right. Let's go into the actual commits then that I've said I was quite excited about. Coincidentally, or well, I would like to say great minds think alike. I'd picked out the commit, which was focused around no sync mode. And when we spoke briefly before we came on air, like we always do, you also said that one of the commits that you found most interesting was the no sync mode. What I liked about this particular commit, because most of this stuff goes right over my head, was that it was extremely well documented, which helps people like me to understand what's going on and why. It was a pull request. And can you explain what it's all about? And spoiler alert for those who haven't read it yet, why were you so pleased to have it added before mainnet?
Wasn't pleased to have it before mainnet. I was and I wasn't. It's a very complicated thing. It's probably the one pull request where I got most into my feelings instead of what happened. So with no sync mode, it's fixing the unstable network we had. Basically, in the attempt to create a simple yet functional protocol, I added this thing called sync mode, which says when there's a Meros connection and it needs to sync, it sends a transaction request. I need this transaction. But what if a transaction happens in real time? Like, how do you know? Like, is that the transaction in response to the request? Is it the node being malicious and trying to lie to you? So because of that, it disables all messages that aren't responses to a request. So if you ask for a transaction, so if you declare sync mode and ask for a transaction, the only message the other person can give is the response. And then to simplify things further, only the person who started sync mode could sync, which means if someone was syncing off of you, you can no longer access any of their data. So it really broke things down quickly when we started looking at networks at scale with a lot of people and a lot of requests going out. And we probably could have done the easy fix of just allowing two-way sync. If I send out a sync request, you can also send a sync request, but when you do send data, it has to be a response to my sync request. And that probably could have worked, but that has its own inefficiencies and problems along the way. Sync mode.
What are those inefficiencies? What are those problems?
To start syncing, you still have to declare sync mode. And we had this thing called sync levels. So every time you start sync mode, it adds one. So if you're already syncing, it doesn't start syncing again. But we didn't effectively use them. So there were still, for a single block, you might trigger 10 sync mode messages depending on how much data was in it.
Okay.
And then you also have to declare syncing over and syncing acknowledged. And you have to wait until syncing acknowledged until you can actually start handling there's a lot of problems. It's something I've known about for months, but something I've left in for two reasons. One, it was simple, and for the time it worked.
Yeah.
It didn't break yet, so I didn't see a need to fix it. And two, it wasn't permanent. At any time, we can update the network protocol. It doesn't affect the database. It doesn't affect the block format. It doesn't affect any of the hashes. It's literally just a protocol byte. And when we update that protocol byte, we can leave other protocols in. If someone says, oh, I'm actually on protocol 1 and you're on protocol 2, we can handle both of them if we just leave in the code for both protocols. So you can actually not do a soft fork, but you can upgrade without doing a hard fork.
All right.
I guess it is kind of a soft fork. No, a soft fork is a fork. It just achieves it via the most proof of work. Anyways, so we can have both protocols alive at the same time. So the hope was a few months after mainnet, that's what we do. We launch both protocols. It isn't a hard fork. It isn't a mandatory upgrade, but people can upgrade to the more efficient protocol, and it doesn't break anything on the network. And because sync mode had yet to break, that was the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why when it finally did break before mainnet, I was mad. I was upset that it had broke because I was hoping to put it off because I thought it would take a few weeks. And that was a few weeks I didn't want to spend before mainnet because of the fact we could easily fix it after mainnet, the fact we could easily improve it after mainnet. And thankfully, it only took a few days, not a few weeks.
Yeah.
So basically, instead of sync mode, oh my gosh, it was so bad. We now spawn two connections. So when you have a Meros node, it connects with two connections. One's the live connection, one's the sync connection. And the live connection handles new blocks as they come across the network, new transactions, so on, so on. In the sync connection, it's eternally in sync mode. When you connect it, instead of using the handshake message, you use the syncing message. And it's like, okay, this socket is reserved for syncing. You send requests, I send requests, you send data, I send data. And it is bidirectional. Anyone can send a request at any time. And with it, we've just really created a much more efficient networking structure. And we even use the same port for it because we have the different handshake messages. Originally, I was thinking that we'd have to use two ports for the two connections, but no, we managed to squeeze them onto the same port, which I'm happy about.
Why is it beneficial to only use the same port and two different types of message?
It just helps with the system management. Instead of having to open two ports up to the network and making sure they point to your machine for your router, they're just there. You just only have to do the one.
Yeah.
So it's just easier for exchanges and so on.
Is it a stretch to say that perhaps could have some security some security?
Instead of doing one thing, you're just doing the same thing but twice.
Yeah.
There isn't really a security implication. It's just a pain to do. There is a higher risk that we would conflict with an existing port, which would have been a pain.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. Okay, all right, excellent. I want to get on to our possibly our last question, or probably our last question actually, because we're struggling for time. There was two, but I'm going to put the other one off because it is a really interesting question about RandomX. So I'm going to put that one off for the next podcast, and I will make sure to ask it first. I'm actually going to do that right now as I speak. And the question I wanted to ask you now, the final question before we wrap up, was there was an announcement in the Discord channel about a new member called Strontium. Now, who is this person and what will their role be within Meros?
So Strontium is someone who's quickly become a friend of mine. And they were interested in helping. They noticed, Meros has some developers, it has some people who are knowledgeable about the business side of things, but they didn't have anyone spreading awareness. We didn't have anyone. And Strontium offered to help with that. He said he really liked the project, he was interested in it, and he wanted to help make sure that Meros gets out there, that Meros is known about, that people realize Meros. So he joined as our communications lead, I guess would be the best title for it for now.
Oh,
and
nice.
He's been working on making sure Meros has a clear brand message, and he's really just trying to make sure that when we start our extensive marketing, it's quality.
How did Strontium find out about Meros, and what was the process? What was the process for him actually getting a place in this newly forming team?
So we had some mutual connections, and he reached out to me saying that he's been following the Meros project, that he's interested in it, and that he wants to help. So I created a chat with him and our mutual connections, and we just talked things over, and he really said he wanted to help. So since then, he's been helping.
Excellent. I was hoping you would say that he heard the podcast and decided after hearing my smooth, dulcet tones that he really wanted to be a part of things. But
I feel we all know that the person with the quality voice on this podcast is the elegant Kayaba.
That's the best you've sounded, I think, in your entire career.
His deep voice is known to make ladies swoon at the pure mention of his voice.
Oh, right. So the new person Kayaba the new person Strontium is to raise brand awareness and generally be communications lead. So I guess that's answers a question which we actually asked last episode about when we're going to put forward when you're going to put forward more marketing and more branding and raise more awareness. Having spoken to Strontium now, is that plan, or is there a plan for that within Meros?
So Strontium likes to make the distinction between marketing and communications. He sees marketing as a way to sell a product and increase value, where communications is about increasing awareness. And that's something I respect and can identify with. Meros isn't meant to be this corporate product to make money for the team. It's meant to be a code base which helps people. So while he is helping with those aspects and we are drawing up plans, really, we are not ready to start marketing yet. We're still working over them.
Okay. Well, he has only been on board. I think he joined the day after we recorded the last of these podcasts. It was literally a month ago. So I guess that is a pretty short time.
The other important part to consider is the fact that Meros never received any institutional funding. We're really a small team of volunteers. We all believe in the project, want to see it succeed. So we don't have millions to throw at marketing. So we really have to plan accordingly.
I guess the flip side to that would be that everybody wants to be there for ground zero. Everybody wants to be there when things really start and where things really start. So although there is no money for funding, I think you may find, or you're beginning to find, something that I assumed would happen, is that the smart people are beginning to think, I should join this project earlier rather than wait for it to become the place to be after the opportunities somewhat passed. I shouldn't say passed, but you get my drift with early adopters. Right, so I guess we're going to wrap up now, but before we do, I'm going to ask you the question, mainnet, rough estimate, when do you reckon we'll see one?
So I'm hoping to start the month-long testnet at the end of February. February, early March-ish. And then it's going to take a month. So mainnet would be a month after that, end of March, hopefully. That's the best time, depending on how developer testnet 3 goes,
Do you feel now that you've had the hiccups that you had with developer testnet 2, do you feel now a little bit less, I don't want to say anxious, but do you feel a little bit less worried about having hiccups when you do move to mainnet? Now that you know that you can effectively solve problems that do crop up on the fly, do you feel a little bit less worried about Meros launching perfectly than you were before?
I think I've always expected every network to launch with some hiccups. I think the frustrating part about this developer testnet 2 was that I did test it privately. I spun up the seed nodes, I got a team member, and we connected to it, and it was all fine. And all the tests passed. And then I implemented peer finding, and I wrote a test for it, and those tests passed. But then when it went to the crowd, it wasn't stable. And I think that's really nerve-wracking to see something which was good and the tests say is good not be good. So I think personally it's given me more anxiety, not less. But I think that anxiety is going to lead to an enhanced sense of caution. And it really has made me think about what could go wrong and the problems with our existing tests and how to expand them to make sure that doesn't happen. So I wouldn't say they've made me more calm, but I would say they've made me more prepared.
Okay, I'm going to quote someone who I think, I'm not sure, I can't be certain, but I think he's a regular listener. He's a developer called Warrows, and he said to me that the problem with testing when it's done by developers is that they're too smart, and you have to give the software to people like me, literally, who will break it, who will do stuff, and who will show that it's probably not as stable as it seems when it's in the hands of smart people. So, not to say that the people who participated in DT2 were morons by any sense of the word, but I guess when you put it out to the public, that's when it is supposed to break. I guess we are supposed to break things, us mortals.
Sure. And we do have multiple tests that test failures in proper handling of bad data. We do test for it. It's just there's a lot of things to test for.
Right, Kayaba, is there anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up?
Just that developer testnet 3 will likely happen. Actually, it's probably going to happen before this episode gets released or start.
Well, says you. Actually, no. Yeah, you're right. You probably are right. Okay. For everybody who's listening, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been another really enlightening episode for me in particular. I really do appreciate you giving your time, Kayaba, and this level of transparency. I know I say it every month, but it really is. You can just look around the cryptosphere and you'll see how many projects give you this level of transparency. So thank you very, very much for your time. I'll make a note, obviously, for us to get the Random X discussion as the first question for the next episode. And thank you for coming. Everybody who's listening, please like and subscribe and all of that other good stuff. If you are interested, if you are a developer and you are interested in being a part of Developer Testnet 2 or Developer Testnet 3, as it will be known by the time you hear this, please join the Discord and you will be assigned a role, I believe, that allows you access to a special channel. Is that right, Kayaba?
Yes, and the reason it's called Developer Testnet isn't because you have to be a developer. We welcome anyone who's interested in testing Meros. The reason it's called a Developer Testnet is because you do have to build the node by yourself. So you at least have to know how to use a terminal and how to run some commands. So while yes, that will mainly be developers, if you're not a developer, you're still more than welcome to join.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and there is, I suppose, there's some sort of support which will be handed out within the Discord, so you'll help people who get a little bit stuck, I suppose.
Correct.
Now I've just signed you up to be support, and I know you hate that.
Right. I've already been doing it, and I'm happy to see people getting involved with Meros.
Excellent. Right, Kayaba, thank you again. I really appreciate you giving up your time. And for those listening, we're going to wrap up now. And I will see you, or I will speak to you, and you'll hear from me in the March update, which will be coming up in the next month. So thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
This show is brought to you by PivX, private instant verified transactions. With its groundbreaking zero-coin staking and masternodes, PivX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex. And for more information, go to www.pivx.org.